Good morning and welcome all. In today's class, I'll be taking up T.S. Eliot's poem Preludes from the second stanza. And here Eliot is writing, with the other masquerades that time resumes, one thinks of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in a thousand furnished rooms. So, in T.S. Eliot's poem Preludes, we get four vignettes or four snapshots of the urban life. And we see that the picture that Eliot presents before us is full of vacuity, depletion, and paleness. And now the crucial word in this stanza is the word masquerade. Masquerade actually means a sort of pretension. So, with the other masquerades, that time resumes. So, these lines capture the essence of urban life and the monotony that characterizes the daily existence of its citizens. So, the term masquerade basically suggests a superficial or deceptive display. So, this implies that the daily activities of people, they are like a performance, they are like a facade that hides their true selves or emotions. So, this aligns with Eliot's frequent exploration of the superficiality and alienation in modern urban life. And apart from this, it is also worth noting that the word masquerade actually originally referred to a formal dance, ball dance, in which all the guests have to wear mask and they will have to take part in dances. So that is the original masquerade dance. People wear mask and they perform the steps which are learned by heart. So in order to do masquerade dance, you actually need to know the process of repetition, because you have to learn those steps previously, dancing steps, and repetition is necessary to do a masquerade. And these two things are important from the original kind of connotation of masquerade, which Eliot tries to insert here. Number one is people wear mask in that ball dance. And in this modern society, the theme remains the same, because all of them are wearing the invisible mask that hides their true identity, that hides their true self. And secondly, the second aspect of masquerade, that where each dance movement is previously learned by heart, that is repetitive. So, in a similar way, modern life, as described in this poem, is also a repetitive gesture. And now, the poet uses the term masquerade to denote the artificiality of clock time, because so far you have seen that Eliot has described the evening scene, the morning scene, according to the clock schedule, 6 o'clock. Okay, morning comes to consciousness. So that is a clock bound world, isn't it? So basically, people base their daily lives, waking up, having a cup of coffee, going to work, then returning home in the afternoon according to the time on the clock. But the poet says that this time bound world, the daily routine of these denizens of modern London, is basically an illusion. Time resumes. So it actually shows the cyclical nature of daily life, much like Albert Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus. So the use of resumes suggests a return to the routine activities that emphasizes the repetitive and unchanging nature of urban existence. So Eliot is basically trying to say that all the things from the morning to evening that we do, the way we pattern our lives as per the clock time, is basically a series of pretensions that we undergo every day, because those steps, like the dance steps of masquerade, are learnt by heart, and it is a type of performance that is full of repetitions that happens every day, day after day. So again, that type of monotonous, vacuity ridden lifestyle of the citizens of London are suggested here. And one thinks of all the hands. Hands is again an example of synecdoche because it is a reference to the people. But Eliot is describing them in parts, not in whole. So one thinks of all the hands, that means of all the people that are raising the dingy shades in a thousand furnished rooms. So the way it is depicted, the last few lines of the second stanza, where we come to know about the movement of the people who are raising that sort of dingy shades. So the act of raising the dingy shades, that symbolizes the beginning of another day, because it's not prelude. Okay, there are four pictures. So each picture ends with a note of light. Remember what happened in the first stanza? 6 o'clock, and then the street lamps, which actually were lighted. That's how he had finished the first stanza. I'm referring back to this line. That's the last line of the first stanza. Then the lighting of the lamps. So lamp, that means light, a symbol of illumination, perhaps a symbol of change, perhaps a way out from this repetitive lifestyle. Perhaps something is a coming, perhaps like W.B. Yeats's second coming. But is the vision of Eliot similar to that of Eliot? Is something happening? Is revelation is at hand? In the next stanza, that possibility of redemption is undercut, because in the second stanza we see that nothing has changed. The morning comes to consciousness of faint, stale smells of beer. So everything remains the same. The dirt, the pollution, the mud remains the same. And here, at the end of the second stanza, there is again a reference to light that remind one of the sudden spiritual illumination. So people are raising their shades because it's another day, light is infiltrating into the house. They are agog with enthusiasm in a thousand furnished rooms. So that highlights the vastness and impersonality of the urban landscape. A thousand furnished rooms suggests a multitude of identical, impersonal living spaces. So the word furnished implies that these rooms are equipped with the necessities of life. All the modern amenities are available in this room. But one thing is found lacking in such rooms. That is the personal warmth. Everything is there. Every modern amenities, necessities of life in terms of its pattern, its decoration. But they lack the warmth. They lack the individuality. So rooms are furnished. Okay. But not their lives. So here, Eliot paints a picture of urban life as a series of monotonous rituals and impersonal interactions. People go through these motions of life every day as if performing their masquerade, as if resuming their routines. And there is a pervasive sense of alienation and lack of genuine connection. So, the last imagery encapsulates the uniformity of urban living. That means the individual lives are reduced to a series of mechanical actions within identical, uninspiring spaces. And remember that the second stanza also ends with perhaps a glimmer of hope, a faint suggestion of light. Something is a coming. Perhaps a redemption is at hand. Perhaps illumination is coming. But in this poem, any possibility of illumination is undercut. There is no promise of immortality. There is no promise of salvation because modern life is like this. So this is a fragment of modern life. From here, there is no escape. You cannot find anything that will provide meaning, that will inject meaning to the dull, prosaic lifestyle of the modern city dwellers. Modern lifestyle is marked by these series of masquerades. Okay, this is the actuality. Now, in the third stanza, a very important stanza, we see Eliot writing, "You tossed a blanket from the bed. You lay upon your back and waited. You dozed and watched the night, revealing the thousand sordid images of which your soul was constituted. They flickered against the ceiling." And these lines have been translated by Rabindranath in such a manner, where he writes যে বিছানা থেকে তুমি ফেলে দিয়েছ কম্বলটা, চিত হয়ে পড়ে অপেক্ষা করে আছো, কখনো ঝিমাচ্ছ, দেখছো রাত্রিতে প্রকাশ পাচ্ছে হাজার খেলো খেয়ালের ছবি, যা দিয়ে তোমার স্বভাব তৈরি। এখানে দেখো, দেয়ার ইজ নো মেনশন অফ দ্য সাবজেক্ট, হি অনলি রাইটস ইউ। সো হু ইজ দিস ইউ? There is a mystery surrounding the identity of this persona. But critics have suggested that in this line, Eliot is making an allusion, because in order to unpack these lines, you need to understand the allusion to a scene from a French novel entitled Boubou de Montparnasse, written by Charles Louis Philippe. And there is a particular scene in this French novel where we find a prostitute named Bertha, spelling Berthe. Bertha has just got up from her bed and is reminding what happened the last night. Okay, so he is recalling actually that what happened last night. And she is a prostitute. Okay. And Eliot transforms this ordinary confusion into a sort of hallucinogenic sordid image. Sordid means dirty. Okay. So here, the first line, when he says, "You tossed a blanket from the bed." So that is a reference to that prostitute Bertha, who is waking up, or perhaps is about to sleep, because whole night she could not sleep because of the work that she has to do. So you tossed a blanket from the bed and lay upon your back. সে যেন জাস্ট হেলান দিয়ে বসে আছে এবং ঝিমোচ্ছে, যেটা আমি বললাম যে ল্যাক অফ স্লিপ। ওকে, সো দ্যাট শোজ, সো দিস ইজ দ্য notion of passivity that is also introduced in these lines. And watch the night reveling. This is very important, because here for the first time Eliot is switching from the depiction of the external reality to a exploration of much more inward reality, because this is what is happening inside the head of Bertha. This is almost like the stream of consciousness. This is not what is kind of being described from outside, just like the kind of gusty shower, the kind of cab horse stamping its feet, nothing. This is what is taking place inside the mind of Bertha, what she is thinking. So Bertha is one of the citizens of this modern life, and the poet zoomed on her, or has taken her as an example to describe the snapshots of modern life. So you dozed and watched the night reveling. So there is a transition from wakefulness to a dozing state. So she is semi-conscious. Her mind is not fully alert, but still active. And the 1,000 sordid images, a very important phrase here, very important, mark it, note it down. So what is the sordid images? The unpleasant, the dirty, or the morally degraded sins. And the use of the word 1,000 emphasizes the overwhelming number and variety of these negative images of which your soul was constituted. That means what you are aware of. This is addressed to Bartha. And this line is very much striking because it suggests that these sordid images are not just external observations, but they are very much intrinsic to the subject's very soul. And it implies that the subject's inner life is filled with moral decay, a corruption, despair. And the last line, they flickered against the ceiling. A very important line. So those dirty images, they are getting displayed as if it is like a film that is getting unrolled. It is a film that is being projected by a projector. And where is that space? That is the ceiling. তো সে যেখানে শুয়ে রয়েছে ঘরটায়, যেন সেই বাড়ির যে ছাদ, সিলিং, যেন সেখানে যেন দেখতে পাচ্ছে, ঠিক যেমনটা একটা সিনেমার পর্দায় আমরা একটা তো সিনেমা দেখি, দৃশ্যগুলো দেখি। তো বার্থার স্মৃতিতে যেন গত রাতের যে চিত্র, যেগুলো সবকটাই আনপ্লেজেন্ট, ডার্টি, সর্ডিড লেখক ইউজ করছেন, যেন বার্থা সেগুলোকে দেখতে পাচ্ছে ওই হাফ কনসিয়াস স্টেটে, being projected in the ceiling, almost unfolding like a movie. So the theme of urban alienation, the spiritual emptiness, has been introduced by this stream of consciousness technique, by this reflection of Bartha. The sordid image, a very key word in this stanza, that is a reflection of the modern world's moral and spiritual decay. This is a recurring theme in T.S. Eliot's poetry. The passive state of waiting, dozing, it suggests a sense of helplessness that pervades the modern life. So here we get a snapshot of a lifestyle or the psyche of a prostitute entitled Bartha. For this scene, Eliot is indebted to this French novel, Boubou de Montparnasse, and the treatment is very unique and in tune with the central theme of Preludes. Then he writes, when all the world came back and the light crept up between the shutters, and you heard the sparrows in the gutters, you had such a vision of the street as the street hardly unfolds. So when all the world came back means came back to its daily routine lifestyle, came back to its daily kind of performances. সকালবেলা যখন অন্যদের কাজ শুরু হচ্ছে তখন বার্থার অ্যাক্টিভিটি শেষ হচ্ছে, ওকে? So when all the world came back, so Eliot stresses the passivity of the individuals. And here, when he says that all the world came back, so it is again a back to their routinized, mechanical, robotic lifestyle. Light crept up between দ্য শাটার্স, দ্য গ্র্যাজুয়াল অ্যাওয়েকেনিং, হ্যাঁ, যেখানে জানলার মধ্যে দিয়ে শাটার্সের মধ্যে দিয়ে হয়তো আলো প্রবেশ করছে প্রত্যেকের ঘরে। There is an interplay of light and darkness in this poem. So the light is creeping up between the shutters. That is evocative of a sense of gradual awakening and the slow arrival of a new day. So this imagery conveys a quiet and almost still the intrusion of daylight into the room. And you heard the sparrows in the gutters. যেখানে আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি একটা পাখির গান। Now this brings to our mind some romantic idea, because Eliot was also a keen bird watcher, and in many of his poems, including Ash Wednesday, we find his sensitivity to the natural world. But here, this romantic image is undercut, just as the opening of the poem, the reference to evening, with all its romantic paraphernalia, was cut by the intrusion of the next line. Similarly, the sparrow is not singing in a kind of romantic Arcadia. Sparrow is not singing in a beautiful valley, but the music of sparrow is coming from the gutters. That's where the juxtaposition of the beautiful and what is full of dirt. And remember that gutters is actually that unglamorous part of the urban environment. It is associated with the mundane reality, নর্দমা যাকে আমরা বলতে পারি, তাই তো? তো সেখান থেকে আমরা তার উপরে হয়তো একটা কোনো পাখি বসে রয়েছে, উপরে হয়তো উঠছে, তার আওয়াজ হচ্ছে বা গান আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি, এবং that shows that even there is a trace of romantic possibility, that romantic possibility is very much undercut by the modern lifestyle, the modern world, the modern cityscape doesn't admit of such type of intrusion into the romantic Arcadia. And then the poet writes, you is again an address to Bartha. You had such a vision of the street as the street hardly understands. So the poet is talking about the vision of Bartha. And actually, Bartha knows many things about the street. Actually, street refers to the people who are walking on the street. Okay, so it shows that Bartha is very much aware of their true self. They hide their true self behind the mask. Okay, but Bartha knows that these people are full of lust. Many of them had been her customer. So you had such a vision. This vision is very transmographic, because this vision is shocking, harrowing. And Bartha knows the reality about these people behind their সিরিজ অফ মাস্কারেডস। এই যে রিচুয়াল তারা করছে 10টা 5টার রুটিন, তার মধ্যে তারা যে কতটা হলো, কতটা করাপ্টেড, সেইটার একটা স্ক্রুটিনি তিনি এখানে করছেন, বা এলিয়ট আমাদেরকে দেখাচ্ছেন বার্থার এই স্ট্রিম অফ কনসিয়াসনেসের মাধ্যমে, যে ইউ হ্যাড সাচ আ ভিশন অফ দ্য স্ট্রিটস। সো দ্য ফাইনাল লাইন ক্রিয়েটস আ কন্ট্রাস্ট between the observer's vision and the street itself. The street is depicted as lacking an understanding that the observer possesses. So, this suggests a disconnect between the deeper, more profound perception of the individual and the indifferent, uncomprehending nature of the urban environment. So, the sense of desolation, the sense of fragmentation of urban life has been captured with its spiritual emptiness. And this vision of the street perhaps is evocative of the moment of existential realization. The vision of the street is evocative of perhaps a moment of epiphany. The observer knows something about the true reality of this modern people. And as the street hardly understand. So actually he is trying to personify the street. Okay, the reality that is often disguised, often masked, that what type of hollow people these city dwellers are. And then he writes, sitting along the bed's edge where you curl the papers from your hair, or clasped yellow soles of feet in palms of both soiled hands. So, soiled hands reference to the presence of dirt. And here we again see a sense of passivity as depicted by the gestures, movements of Bartha. So sitting along the bed's edge, সে বসে আছে একটা খাটের কোনায় ধারে, যেখানে she is curling papers from the hair. So these papers have been used to decorate her hair. Okay. And now she is perhaps removing that makeup in the morning after the job is over. So curling the papers from your hair or clasped the yellow soles of feet. Remember that the word yellow is striking here. As I said, this is the color symbolism. Yellow is something that is associated with paleness, বিবর্ণতার প্রতীক, ধূসর, ফ্যাকাশে, হ্যাঁ? The yellow is that type of color that clasps the yellow soles of feet. Yellow also is connected with disease, jaundice যেটাকে আমি বলছিলাম কালকে. So yellow soles of feet. So this is not a kind of picture of a healthy lifestyle. Everywhere there is the festering wounds, the everywhere lurking some diseases, as if the entire city is passing on a disease to those who live in it. Or clasp the yellow soles of feet in the palms of both soiled hands. So soiled, again, it is connected with the dirt, the pollution, that is actually indicative of the polluted lives of these modern denizens of city life. Okay, and this is the picture of Bartha, one of the people from the city, and it shows the moral vacuity that is at the spiritual center of this poem. Now, in the next stanza, the last stanza, fourth one, his soul stretched tight across the skies that faint behind a city block, or trampled by insistent feet at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock. So his soul, whose soul is it? Not Bertha's, then it would have been her soul. So actually here in the fourth stanza or in the fourth prelude, the street has been personified. যে রাস্তার উপর দিয়ে লোকগুলো হাঁটছে সেই রাস্তাকে এখানে মিন করা হচ্ছে, তার সোলটাকে বলছে। স্ট্রেচড টাইট অ্যাক্রস দ্য স্কাইস দ্যাট ফেড বিহাইন্ড দ্য সিটি ব্লক। কারণ শহরের রাস্তা আমি বলেছিলাম যে সেখানে আঁকা বাঁকা এবং তুমি একটানা দেখতে পারবে না যে রাস্তা কতটা স্ট্রেট গেছে। এটা বাড়ির বিল্ডিং এসে সেই রাস্তাকে ঢেকে দেবে, তোমাকে আবার গিয়ে বাঁক নিয়ে সেই রাস্তার মধ্যে দিয়ে যেতে হবে। দ্যাট ফেড, সেই জন্য বলছে ফেড হয়ে যায় এই রাস্তাগুলো। হ্যাঁ, একটানা তুমি দেখতে পারবে না, লাইক আ ভিলেজ রোড। এবং হিজ সোল স্ট্রেচড টাইট অ্যাজ ইফ দ্য স্ট্রিট পজেসেস আ সোল। রাস্তার জন্য একটা আত্মা, একটা সত্তা রয়েছে। স্ট্রেচ টাইট অ্যাক্রস দ্য স্কাইস, তার উপর দিয়ে লোকে দিনরাত হেঁটে যাচ্ছে। অর ট্রাম্পেলড, দবিয়ে যাওয়া, হ্যাঁ, যে অর্থে আমরা বলি ট্রাম্পেলড বাই ইনসিস্টেন্ট ফিট। এখানেও দেখো মানুষের কথা বলছেন না, অংশে বলছে। এন্টায়ার কবিতায় তিনি মানুষকে পার্টে দেখছেন। সো হি ইজ ডেসক্রাইবিং আ হোল ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল in terms of series of synecdoches, like hands, like feet. Okay, so trampled by insistent feet at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock. So here the natural world is obscured, natural world is overshadowed by the urban environment. There is a disconnection from nature. There is a dominance of the artificial man-made cityscape over the individual's spiritual life. Trampled by the insistent feet. So the insistent feet symbolizes the constant movement of the people. Okay, where people's lives are dictated by routine, mechanical actions. They walk over the road, over the street at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock. So this repetitive, cyclical nature of the urban existence that suggests a relentless passage of time and the daily grind that the inhabitants of the city endures. So here we see the existential angst of modern urban life. The soul of the road, the soul of the street has been personified. And sometimes this phrase, soul stretched tight across the skies, is reminiscent of Jesus. In upcoming lines, there will be more striking reference to Jesus, but at least this line, across the skies that face, we suddenly recall the picture of Jesus who is pinned to the cross just the moment before the crucifixion. So in the last stanza, the image of Jesus comes sometimes. So Jesus is the poem suggesting a Christian way out when the biblical notions coming into the purview. Is the poet trying to highlight a Christian sense of the term? That is the question. In the next few lines, we will be surprised to see that there is no Christian kind of possibility of redemption, no way out. You cannot redeem the world as per the tenets of Christianity. Christianity is dying. It is like a defunct doctrine, no longer existing, dead signifier, and short, square fingers, stuffing pipes, and evening newspapers, and eyes assured of certain certainties, the conscience of a blackened street. Important line. The conscience of a blackened street, impatient to assume the world. So, the short, square fingers stuffing pipes is an imagery of the routine of these people. So, Eliot uses detailed imagery to depict the mundane actions of city dwellers, their habitual action, and their reading the evening newspapers. But what is their intention while reading this newspaper? What is actually they looking for? The eyes assured of certain certainties. That means these people are having a cursory glance at the newspaper to find something that may be of help to them. So they are thinking about their own profit. So is there any opportunity? Is there any advertisement? Is there any possibility of finding or getting a profit from this newspaper? So they are thinking of this modern people, they are thinking of their material advancement only. This is the jet-paced modern life. They don't have time. They are returning from their office, having a cursory glance at the evening newspaper, trying to find something that may be of help to them. রবীন্দ্রনাথ বলছেন আধুনিক কবিতা প্রবন্ধে এই মানুষদের সম্পর্কে, যে আধুনিক মানুষ কেমন, হ্যাঁ, এবং যেটার সাথে এই প্যাসেজটার খুব প্রাসঙ্গিকতা রয়েছে, মিল পাচ্ছ, যে এলিয়ট যে লাইনগুলো লিখছেন, যদিও রবীন্দ্রনাথ অন্য প্রসঙ্গে বলছেন, মানে আধুনিক কবিতা কেমন সেইটা, আধুনিক মানুষের জীবনযাত্রা কেমন সেইটা বোঝাতে গিয়ে তিনি লিখছেন যে আধুনিক কালের মনের মধ্যেও তাড়াহুড়ো, সময়ের অভাব, জীবিকা জিনিসটা জীবনের চেয়ে বড় হয়ে উঠেছে। তারা লাগানো যন্ত্রের ভিড়ের মধ্যেই মানুষের হু হু করে কাজ, হুড়মুড় করে আমোদ প্রমোদ। যে মানুষ একদিন রয়ে বসে আপনার সংসারকে আপনার করে সৃষ্টি করত, সে আজ কারখানার উপর বরাত দিয়ে প্রয়োজনের মাপে তড়িঘড়ি একটা সরকারি আদর্শে কাজ চালানো কাণ্ড খাড়া করে তোলে। ভোজ উঠে গেছে, ভোজনটা বাকি। মনের সঙ্গে মিল হলো কিনা সে কথা ভাববার তাগিদ নাই, কেননা মন আছে অতি প্রকাণ্ড জীবিকা জগন্নাথের রথের দড়ি ভিড়ের লোকের সঙ্গে মিলে টানবার দিকে। সঙ্গীতের বদলে তার কণ্ঠে শোনা যায় মারো ঠেলা হেই ও। জনতার জগতের তাকে বেশিরভাগ সময় কাটাতে হয় আত্মীয় সম্বন্ধের জগতে নয়। এই হুড়োহুড়ির মধ্যে অসজ্জিত কুৎসিতকে পাশ কাটিয়ে চলবার প্রবৃত্তি নেই। So Rabindranath very astutely described the routine of these city dwellers, যে মানুষের মধ্যে তাড়াহুড়ো, সময়ের অভাব, and the very pertinent remark that Tagore has used, যে জীবিকা জিনিসটা মানুষের জীবনের চেয়ে বড় হয়ে উঠেছে। So this is a very vital take on modernism. This is what modernism is. Modernism is a scan. Modernism is a scrutiny. Modernism is an outlook on the modern life. This is what we are. We have forgotten our ethical moorings. We are the hollow people. We are the stuffed people, as Eliot says. So these people who are thinking of their own material advancement, and this is the picture of the reality. So the conscience of a blackened street. Look at the color symbolism, black signifying evil. So the fourth stanza, much like the third stanza where we find the conscience of Bertha, here in the fourth stanza we find the conscience of the blackened street, a particular street in London, but that is impatient to assume the world. That means the entire world is going to be like this. This is not that is only taking place in a particular corner in a modern city life. This moral vacuity, this spiritual emptiness is about to engulf the whole world. This moral decay, this pollution is about to assume, is about to take control, take hold of the entire world. So very impatient. So the street is perhaps very restless. It is desirous of taking on a more control. So this is a very bleakish, dystopic vision that Eliot invokes about the city's inhabitants who are eager to make their mark on the world despite the bleakness of their environment. Okay, so that's why it is impatient, and perhaps there is nothing that can redeem the fallen humanity. So at this stage of extinction, if you think of redemption, only one image comes to your mind as per the Christian theology. That is the image of Jesus. And similarly, in the next line, Eliot is thinking of the possibility of religious salvation. That's why he says, I am moved by fancies. Look here, for the first time in the last stanza, he uses that personal pronoun I. I was totally absent in the entire poem. For the first time, he uses his own person actually, and talking of his own feelings. I am moved by fancies that are curled around these images. So, moved obviously is very much shocked. He is very much struck with awe on finding the mechanical, fleeting, whimsical, robotic lifestyle of the modern London. Okay, so he is very much moved by getting this picture. So now Eliot has given you different snapshots, different pictures. Now he shows his reaction as if they are some daydreams, as if they are fantasies. And now he is talking of his reaction. So look at this word, that Eliot is not writing that I am moved by these pictures, I am moved by these images. তিনি কি বলছেন, I am moved by these fancies. তাহলে fancy that is also connected to a sort of illusion. তার মানে এই যে modern lifestyle that is ridden with illusion, that is also being invoked. I am moved by fancies that are curled around these images. So, city life is not real. City life is not natural life. There is only the appearance of reality, verisimilitude, and there is the falsity that is at the center of the city life. So, what does the poet do? He is clinging onto the notion of something that is infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering. So, this vision, something that is reminding the poet, is the vision of Jesus, infinitely gentle and infinitely suffering, reminds obviously one of the Christ. The suffering recalls the figure of Jesus because he underwent the pain for redeeming the fallen humanity. আমাদের জন্য সেই কষ্ট হয়তো ভোগ করেছে, but he was infinitely gentle. So he was full of compassion, full of profound tenderness. So is Eliot thinking that there is the Christ-like figure that can save them? But remember, Preludes is not endorsing a biblical vision. In Eliot's poem Preludes, we have a skewed vision of the doctrines of the Bible. There is no Jesus. There is no kind of picture of salvation. Promise to that world of immortality is negated. Not possible. At least এই পর্যন্ত up to line number 51, we think that maybe something is a coming. Jesus or new God that can save them. That can infiltrate something meaningful into the dull lifestyle of the city dwellers. But the next line, the last 3 lines, negate this possibility again, where he says or shows that it is never possible. এইখানে আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে তার যে বৃতৃষ্ণা এই সংসারের প্রতি, এই যে মেকি সংসার বা সমাজ, সেইটা লাস্ট 3টে লাইনে বুঝতে পারছি। তিনি বলছেন যে wipe your hands across your mouth and laugh. The worlds revolve like an ancient women gathering fuel in vacant lots. So wipe your mouth. তোমার এইটা দেখে কিছু করার নেই। লেখক যেন আমাদেরকেই বলছেন যে মুখের উপর একবার হাত বুলাও এবং হাসো, কারণ আমাদের আর কিছু করারই নেই। Our response is very much like Vladimir Estragon, like Rosencrantz Guildenstern in Tom Stoppard's play. The absurdity of life is suggested, the futility of life, where death triumphs every time, isn't it? So, wipe your hand across your mouth and laugh. মুখে উপর একবার হাত বুলিয়ে আমাদের হাসি ছাড়া আর কিছু করার উপায় নেই, কারণ পৃথিবীটা ঘুরপাক খাচ্ছে। দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ড ইজ রিভলভিং লাইক, সেই বৃদ্ধ মহিলাদের মতন, those who are gathering fuel in the vacant lots. So they are collecting the newspapers, those rejected, thrown out papers, collecting it as a fuel from the vacant lots, from the plots of land বিটুইন দ্য টু হাউসেস, সেখান থেকে তারা সেটাকে সংগ্রহ করছে এবং ঘুরপাক খাচ্ছে। সো দ্য পোয়েম এন্ডস উইথ অ্যান ইমেজ অফ রোটেশন, revolve, and it shows a gesture of resignation and perhaps a forced attempt at humor in the face of bleakness. The act of wiping one's hand across the mouth can be seen as a way to remove the remnants of something distasteful or to stifle an expression of disgust or despair. So it is a hollow lifestyle. The world is revolving like the ancient women. So it is a simile that compares the repetitive cyclical nature of the world, or perhaps the inhabitants of this world, that they are doing this every day. They are gathering fuel in vacant lots. Picture of poverty, picture of bare life, picture of desolation. And the vacant lots symbolize the emptiness, the abandonment, while the act of gathering fuel suggests a basic primitive need for sustenance and warmth. So it can be seen as a metaphor for the human condition, where people go through the motions of life, finding little to sustain them in a barren, indifferent world. So there is no promise of eternity. So this is what may be the poem's way of saying this: the robotic, meaningless life is not new. It is happening almost continuously. Human beings are doomed to such an existence. So the entire poem ends with a very dystopic image that life in the modern world is a struggle for survival. So these lines, the last few lines, encapsulate the theme of existential despair and the cyclical, monotonous nature of life in modern or urban environment. People struggle to find meaning in this life. They are just living for survival, okay? Just mere survival, nothing progressive. And here is a mockery of the concept of Bergson. It is often said that in the ending scene of Preludes, T.S. Eliot took a sarcastic view of Bergson's theory of creative evolution. Bergson, or Henry Bergson, who outlined his theory in the book Creative Evolution, suggested that life is a constant process of change and development, driven by an elan vital, or vital force. And this force propels life toward new forms. This force propels life toward the greater complexity. That is the idea of creative evolution. And this is different from the theory of Charles Darwin. Darwin said that life has evolved on Earth from simple to complex, and even more complex forms. And this evolution has taken shape through natural selection. But Bergson postulates an elan vital, the vital principle, which according to him is the driving force for the life to ascend in the ladder of natural organization. So it is the continuous process of becoming, continuous, ever ending creative innovativeness. It is limitless, boundless. There is a promise of eternity. It is progressing towards that transcendental vision. This is what Bergson had promised in his book, published around 1905, 1907. And here, Eliot doesn't endorse the rosy view of Henry Bergson. So instead of showing the world progressing towards betterment, towards that state of higher elevation, Eliot shows that the world is rotating just endlessly from the ancient time. The ancient women also refers to the ancient civilization like the Greek Rome, where people had to gather the kind of different sorts of corn, food, and now they are gathering fuel. So it is a bare survival. It is not in an upward arc of spiritual upliftment. They are doomed to such an existence. So the ending scene is very dystopic, bleakish in nature. And here, everywhere you can see that the four snapshots that Eliot gives us about the modern city life talk of the sense of exhaustion, talk of the sense of depletion. There is no creative renewal. Life is not revitalized but depleted. There is a fragmentation. There is no evolving life force. On the other hand, the city dwellers are isolated, disconnected. There is the lack of creativity, the lack of vitality. So that's why the morning comes to consciousness of faint, stale smells of beer. And there is the spiritual and emotional desolation. Wipe your hands across your mouth and laugh. So T.S. Eliot challenged the optimism inherent in Bergson's philosophy. And last but not the least, in this poem Preludes, Eliot uses the physician heal thyself paradox. So what does that mean? Physician heal thyself, যে ডাক্তার তুমি তোমার নিজের রোগ সারাও, the physician heal thyself. And this concept is actually a biblical phrase. It is taken from book of Luke, where Jesus implies that people often expect others to solve their problems while failing to address their own shortcomings. So this is the paradoxical idea behind it that can be inferred in the poem's depiction of modern life and the human psyche. The inhabitants of Eliot's urban landscape are often portrayed as spiritually paralyzed, suggesting a need for introspection, a need for self-healing. প্রত্যেকটা মানুষ, মানে কবি আমাদেরকেও অ্যাড্রেস করছেন অ্যাকচুয়ালি, বিইং আ পার্ট অফ দিস মডার্ন কালচার, যে হোয়াট ইজ নিডেড ইজ আ সেলফ হিলিং, নিজেকে শুশ্রূষা করার, বা নিজেকে জানো, নিজের এক্সিস্টেন্স সম্পর্কে জানো। আত্মানং বৃদ্ধি, নো দাইসেলফ। এই মানুষরা তারা একটা অ্যামনেশিয়ার মধ্যে রয়েছে, তারা নিজেদেরকে জানতে চাইছে না, নিজের স্বরূপকে জেনেও তারা না জানার ভান করে রয়েছে, তারা নিজেকে শুশ্রূষা করতে পারছে না। সো দিস concept of physician heal thyself has been used to show that people love to live in that romantic tower of ivory, cut off from the reality. The human beings cannot bear the very much reality. They think that others will solve their own problems. How can this be possible? Eliot is questioning. If you want salvation, you need to work on this yourself. Don't bank on other people's for it. No one can solve your own problem. As a physician, you have to heal yourself. But these products of the city culture, they're not out to do this. So Eliot captures the sense of spiritual malaise and the routine of daily life that leaves individuals feeling fragmented and disconnected. So their superficiality, their materialism, the gross materialism, that is suggestive of their uncertainties and insecurities. So the paradox of physician heal thyself comes into the poem, as the poem critiques the inability of the individuals to recognize, to address their own spiritual and existential crisis. The inhabitants of Eliot's world are in need of healing, but they seem incapable of initiating the self-awareness and introspection necessary for such healing. So they are, in a sense, physicians who cannot heal themselves, trapped in a cycle of routine and superficiality. So through this paradox, Eliot emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and the difficulty of achieving the true understanding in the face of modern life's distractions, disillusionments. And the poem's bleak portrayal of urban existence serves as a call to recognize and confront the deeper issues, using perhaps the biblical doctrine that heal one's own ailments before attempting to address those of others. So this is the image of the series of vignettes that is unfolded by the poet. So in a sense, Eliot's Preludes is a scrutiny of the malaise of the modern life, the spiritual vacuity. That's why it is said that Eliot is a spiritual Goethe or Goethe, okay, the German writer. The way he tries to scan the malaise of the modern civilization and also is trying to find a solution. But the image or the final vision that comes out from this poem is one of kind of dystopic one. Nothing optimistic is being suggested. Okay, it is a pessimistic vision. There is the persistent prevalence of isolation in city life. There is the sense of artificiality that grips the modern citizens, and there is the picture of the spiritual vacuity that possesses them. Okay, so this is what, in short, the central theme of Eliot's